Y'all have been faithful to be here on time and ready to go, so we'll start on time, ready to go, and hopefully we'll be done right in an hour. This meeting will be a little different. There's no real training per se in this one. We're going to kind of talk about, just kind of touch on where we're trying to do as a church. So I think it's important that we do that, just like we talk about it every week in worship. And so we're going to talk about our goal. We're going to look just briefly at some of the key statistics and what I think they're telling us. And then we're going to talk about schedule changes. And I'm going to tell you everything I know. And then I'll have a handout, give you a little bit of time to digest the handout and talk at your table. And then we'll talk a little bit more, and I've got another handout. And so when we get to the end of the meeting, you'll be able to do exactly what I've done, and that's draw your perfect schedule. And so that's the goal tonight. And then we'll come back and probably have another opportunity to talk about schedule a little bit. But we'll talk about what's driving that, why we think we need to make the changes. I want you to be as informed as I am as we move through that. But before we do all of that, you kind of know the rough agenda tonight. Let's have a word of prayer, shall we? Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank you for a beautiful day and for people who are passionate about Bible study and willing to give up a little bit of that beautiful afternoon to sit inside and to listen to me and to think about what you could do at First Baptist. Lord, as we spend our time together, Lord, help me to use that time wisely and effectively, Lord, and as we leave here, at least with some clarity. I pray this in your name. Amen. Okay, so I don't know what happened. I tested it and it quit. So we've kind of done welcome and prayer. Sherry's been handing out your class information. I want to continue to stress that, factoring involvement. I didn't bring the formula. I've been over it for over a year now, and so if you want to factor your involvement, but I think it's important that factoring involvement does a couple things. It focuses our attention on developing leaders. We have to be about a continual process of developing leaders. And so when you're figuring your ratio, if you've got someone that's come out of your Sunday school group and is leading someplace else, that's a 1. You get full credit for that person. It's not against your attendance. And then you take everybody that's been 2 out of 4 times, and you count those people up and then add them to the people that you sent out to lead, divide by the number of people that's on your list, and that'll give you a ratio of involvement. I think it's a little bit better indicator than attendance, just because it's tracking along to some things I think that are important. I do this on a Sunday school-wide basis about once or twice a year. I look at how many people out of the 800 plus people we have on the roll that have been here at least one time in the year. And so that tells me something about the effectiveness of our Sunday school. You can do that on a small scale for your class, and I think it's worthwhile doing. If you need that formula, I'm happy to give it to you anytime. So let's talk a little bit about kind of where we're going. So what's the strategy of our church? What are we really trying to accomplish? What's our stated goal? And so does anybody, can you quote this? This is the test of the evening. Can you quote? No, I didn't say give me a word. Can you give me the whole thing? Yeah, you're on a roll. There you go. Staff wives. Score for the staff wives, okay? Now, next time, y'all, you got to beat the staff wives next time, okay? And so at First Baptist, we seek to equip believers to follow Christ and engage the world. So they're high-fiving, I can't read. And so people may know Christ. That's really what we're trying to do here at our church. And I think that is a great, concise statement. We want to equip people and engage people. And so as we go about doing that, that's our strategy. That's everything kind of needs to work towards that here at First Baptist. And I think that's worthwhile doing. And so what we do on Sunday morning is we want to have our consistent effort of pointing people towards knowing Christ. As we gather together on Sunday morning where that person has been in Bible study for 50 years, we want to point them to Christ. We want to see their relationship growing. If they're a new believer, I had an opportunity to sit in one of our Sunday school classes today, and we were talking about, well, let me just stop for a second. Did you know we've started a Sunday school class a couple weeks ago, about a month ago now? We have a bilingual Spanish class now. Isn't that awesome? And this morning I had a conversation with our young professionals class, and we're getting ready to start another class out of that class. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll hear about a young professionals class, which is actually the new class, but they get the name because that's who we're going to go after and trying to reach, young professional singles. And then the people that were once young professional singles who are now married and starting to have children, they're going to become our newest young married class. And so you'll hear about that in the next week or so, but it's right in the transition phase. Had a great conversation with them this morning. And I'm thinking back to that discussion. There's a young lady in that class that did not grow up Southern Baptist, don't know whether what her status is as a believer. But when we were talking about the class and the possibility of a schedule change, you know what she said? Don't take my Sunday school class away, because I've learned so much. And so what we do really does matter, whether they have been a part and a believer for 60 years or they've been at it for just 3 years. And so that's very, very important. Consistently equipping. You know, we need to have a flow in our Bible studies where people are moving through and people are getting the opportunity to lead and develop leadership and have places to go, because we continue to start Bible study units, which we need to do. We're going to need more and more leaders. And that's just very, very important to what we do. We can't stress that enough. And we need those believers in every situation to be ready to engage with purpose, to talk with people about their faith. Yeah, Wayne.
We used to have a singles one class, which now sounds like what you're describing in your young professionals.
Right.
Is that going to be in the singles department? Because right now there's only one class in the singles department, right?
There really isn't we can come back to this later, but there really isn't a singles department. I just have individual classes.
That kind of went away.
Kind of went away. And so, and I still bemoan the loss of singles too. And I continue to work on that. We can talk about that later off track for everybody else. But anyway, that's just kind of the strategy that we're working on. And so, his is Arthur Fleck. So you need to know who his is. And so I cut this out of an article, and I think maybe I put the link down in the page here in a minute. But as we think about growing our Bible study, here are 5 things that remain important since the 1900s. Actually, about 1927 is my book. And so you have like a few things that you don't own. If you actually want to see an original copy of the 1927 Arthur Fleck Standard Sunday School, you can pick mine up, but you can't leave the office with it. It's one of about 2 books that just don't run out, because they're hard to come by these days. But in that, he said, if you're going to grow your Sunday school, you have to do 5 things. Know the possibility, prospects, enlarge the organization, start new units, provide space, have a place to meet, enlist and train workers, and go after people. That fits right in with what we're trying to do at First Baptist right now. And so this go after people is engage. Enlist and train, provide space, enlarge the organization, know the possibility. These are all things that have to do with equipping and having a place for them. And so it's amazing to me as I look at the collection of books that I have, whether it's 27 Arthur Fleck Standard Sunday School, it's the 2005 Activate book, whatever winds up being the small group model of the day, it always comes back to, if you're going to grow, you have to do these 5 things. So these are kind of people principles, is what I like to think of them as. And so that's why we kind of tend to focus on these things week in and week out. With that list, is there anything that you want to talk about real quick? I was happy Virginia scolded me. She had no prospects. The possibility. Yeah, so Jack doesn't, I told her it was like about 4 classes and we have no prospects for. So, actually, I was telling Virginia, the people who come to us in their 70s and 80s, we quickly convert them to Sunday school members. That's probably the group that joined Sunday school the fastest. So, anyway, let's talk about some statistics for just a minute. Just a quick overview, not anything laborious or that's going to take a ton of our time. But worship attendance. So Sherry printed these out for you, and then I tried to make them a little bit larger. So basically what you're looking at is worship attendance from last Sunday back a year, and then the same time frame the year before. And basically they run almost parallel. We can account for a couple of the depths, like the one that goes to 0, obviously, is Christmas. The year before, Easter fell on a Sunday, and we did something different for Easter. That's why there's a big dip there. Our children met, the adults didn't. And so we have some things like that we can explain as far as we look at just the worship comparisons, okay? Questions, comments, what?
Easter always falls on Sunday.
It does.
Yes.
I didn't want to lie.
No, you didn't. We appreciate your honesty.
It's going to be a rough meeting, I can tell. Anyway, adult attendance, similar thing. Obviously, just when you're looking at the two sets of graphs, and we list out some of that stuff at the bottom. The basic thing is they run almost the same. I mean, there's Sundays that are up and down. There's periods where one's a little ahead or behind of the other. You can go in and pick out when the building renovation was. Those kinds of things. It's pretty easy for me to look at the calendar of events and go, okay, this multiple months of down is the building renovation. That's just easy to do. But the big thing is if you laid a ruler on it, which is fun to do, it's basically flat. And it's been flat for a couple of years. But I don't have to keep just going on about that. And then if we look at Bible study to worship, you see those sort of things still pop out. They follow almost a similar pattern except for a couple of those specialty days that are in there. And so what you're seeing is we're a church that's just kind of rocking along, okay? And so that's not a bad thing. We're a healthy church. We're seeing lots of people accept Christ. To be honest, I've never served at a church that's had as many adults baptized as this church. It just floors me. I mean, I used to get excited. I mean, I remember the first time we baptized a senior adult. I mean, I was like, woohoo! This never happens. Now that we've done about 10 or so, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, it happens regularly here. So there's just because our attendance is flat, I don't want to say that a lot of good things aren't going on in our Bible study, because they are. You know, it's easy to walk around and basically our Sunday school classes that are in their 70s, 60s, and 50s are all full. You go through the room, Jerry's full, Susan's, you had to pull a chair in today, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, Bill's full, single three's full. And we can go around the room. Now we get outside of that, Bob's full. We have classes that are also doing well. But we get outside of those, the numbers start dropping off. And for some of those we know, like the Alathian class only has one living member still. But if she shows up, Joe's ready to teach. And I said, that's a viable class. It is. They have good fellowship, good Bible study, and Joe checks on her every week. Good ministry. That's a viable class. That's good. But at the same time, I looked back in history, and one time that class had 60 members, 30 couples. That's been a long time ago, but it was a big class. When I came, Virginia's class ran almost 50. And this morning you had 10? 13. So we have a shift that is going on in our church. It's just naturally happening. We're a multi-generational church. We have a constant flow of people being born in and moving in. We have a constant flow of people who love this church and have spent their life here, literally. And that's a great, healthy church. I was explaining this morning, one of the things that excites me is when my granddaughter comes, not only does she have a young adult experience, but she has senior adults that want to talk to her, and she gets this whole gamut of church that's very different than where she goes to church. This is primarily just a college church. She likes coming here. Loves it. I got like, hi Poppy, bye Poppy, and off she goes. That's a healthy church. That's what we like seeing. So, schedule. What's driving it? A couple of things. All right, so let me kind of shift gears. All right, number of prospects, we're up. We're continuing to see more and more prospects. We need to continue to contact them. There's other things about teachers and stuff that I normally share, but I really want to save as much time as possible as to give us time to walk through this schedule stuff slowly. So, what's the action plan for getting off of flat? What are the things that are going on in our community? What are the things that we're observing in our church? What are the things that are going on in a larger context of culture? And so we've kind of been on a long staff process of asking lots of questions. And that process grew then to asking some church leaders and deacons. Some of this stuff you're going to have heard before if you're in some of those groups about what's going on. What do we think we're seeing? And so now this is just the expansion of one of the key leadership groups in our church is y'all. You're going to touch the largest section of adults in our congregation. And so having your input into this process is very, very important. And so here are some things as we think about guidelines for this discussion, what we know. So there's a proposed change to move from 3 smaller services to 2 larger worship services, 1 choir-led, 1 band-led. Okay? That's the change. Some variant of that. And now, why? Okay? And it's bigger in the back. If you want to flip either way, that's fine. And I may just go back to presenting on the back wall. But, so that's what the proposed change is. And you'll see that in the print. That's going to be on the top of the page of the first handout. Okay? And so, as we think about that, here are some things that we know. The churches and worship services that are growing the fastest in the Austin area feature a band-led style of worship. Okay? So if we look at fellowship, we look at celebration, we look at Austin Stone, we look at First Georgetown, who we kind of look at a lot because there's a lot of similarities between us and them. We look at Great Hills, we look at Hyde Park, we look at the churches that are most like us, and we start picking them apart. Probably nobody picks a church apart better than Larry Stair does. I know where stuff hides. I know where to dig up the dirt. I got friends in low places, but those churches, even if they're like us and they have 2 worship services, the service that's growing is their band-led or contemporary worship service. And so that just seems to be where the trend is going. We know from a larger context of church starts, people that are trying to start a church in Austin, they're all band-driven. I don't know but one church that tried to start with a choir-driven service, and they were doing that on very specific, purposeful grounds. We also know this, that's outside, great, I'm happy for Austin, bless them, but I don't want to be everybody in Austin. I want to be First Baptist Round Rock. I'm not called to help them. I'm called to learn from them, and it's free research and development. But other than sponging off of them, so what? We do know this though. Our 8:30 worship service is our fastest growing worship service and may be at our least popular time. Okay? So, for example, when I came here, and nobody, you know me, nobody studies the church like Larry does. I got over a scrap of information I could about First Baptist Round Rock, and you know the number 2 question I asked when I got here? Tell me about your 8:30 service. That just doesn't make any sense to me, because that's defying trends. How did that come to be? And so I know a lot of the history of that service. I understand why it came to be. It still puzzles me that it grows. It just does. Because nobody's starting band-led services at 8:30 in the morning. They just pick different times for some reason. So obviously, if nothing else, we have an itch for that worship service. The rules of 60 and 80, they apply to us. So what are those rules? We know this about just large group space. If the large group is less than 60% full, you know what happens? You walk in the room and you go, wow, nobody's here. Look at all this empty space. And so you can watch people turn around in the 8:30 service and look up at the dark balcony, which is dark on purpose. We're kind of like trying to hide it because we don't want people up there, because we at least want to get 60% on the ground floor. Okay, so 60% is kind of like, you know, if you're, I came from a church that we had a venue that if we got to 50%, it really looked pathetic. It still was 100 people in a 230-seat venue, but it just felt like nobody was there. And the service energy goes down. You know, the people on the stage are a little less pumped about being there. You know, those kind of things start happening. We also know that if we get over 80%, you walk in the room and you go, crud, there's no place to sit. Or somebody's in my seat, you know? And so there's this like little window that we want to really love to be in. And that's just human nature. I wish I could change how you view space, but it's just not going to happen. I mean, this has been the rules forever, in our country at least. We need to continue to provide an opportunity for a choir-led worship service. I love the fact that we have a choir-led worship service. Why? Nobody else has one. Linda, how far would you have to drive to go to another church that has a choir? Would it be Hyde Park or First Georgetown? Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I can't think of anybody at Baptist Church. I think the Methodist Church has a choir in one of their services, but you've got to go a ways to get another Southern Baptist church that has a choir-led service. We're talking 15, 20 miles. So there are people that we reach solely because they can sing in a choir or they love choir music. And you know what? I don't want to take that from them. I want to see that continue to happen, and so does our pastor. And so you're probably, as this thing unfolds, you're going to hear all kinds of wild and crazy things like, we can start a rumor right now. Larry hates choir. That's not true. Choir hates Larry. But we're going to make a rumor. Let's make it Larry hates choir. That's just not going to be true, because I love choir because there are people that I love choir and love that experience. And you can see it on their face. It is a worshipful thing for them. We need to continue that. Our pastor realizes that. We desire, as a staff, to be multi-generational. There is something special about this congregation. in the fact that I can play with the Schumann kids and the Darst boys. And what do we know about discipleship? If a teenager has 5 to 7 friendships that are not their parents, not their youth minister, and not somebody in their peer group, they are likely to stay a lifelong disciple. Lifelong. Don't ignore what's going on in our preschool children and youth areas. Matter of fact, some of those people that have been sitting in your class and have soaked up your good teaching for a long, long time, send them to Melba or Tracy for a year. You'll probably never get them back, but send them. It's important. It's important for our children that they have those relationships, and it's a great place to learn to teach and to gain those kinds of skills. So you've got people that are still able to get on the floor, send them. But we desire to continue to be that style of church. When it comes to this, really what the ultimate question becomes is this. There's a cost to change. There just is. There's a cost to not changing. Do those costs outweigh the long-term benefit to this church? Now, I will tell you this, and this is a sad tale of woe. When I started in ministry, I got put on my first associational committee. You know what my first associational committee was? How do we dispose of the assets and membership of 4th Avenue Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri? I'd much rather deal with growth problems than to look at the 15 hardy souls that love Jesus, love their church, and because of no fault of their own, are in a building that seated 2,500 for worship in the 40s. And now the association had to go. It's time. I don't want to be that church either. I want this church to be viable long after I retire. So at some point when I'm barely able to walk and you're having 250th anniversary here, wind me up, bring me back, and I'll say something funny. Okay? But I want to be a good, viable church. But I know that there's a cost to be paid to stay, and there's a cost to be paid to go. What are the benefits? That's the equation that Jared and I wrestle back and forth with all the time. And so, and to be honest, I don't know. But that's why we're having this meeting, okay? So hopefully we'll come out of this with some understanding, okay? So, what now? Why now? Okay? Very good question. Why now? With the renovation, we gained back. Jared says we gained seating capacity. That is true. But basically what happened is we gained back to the capacity of the building. Okay, so we're back to what the building was built to hold. Okay, 635, 650, depending on who you talk to, that's the number. Because we couldn't be larger than that because we had to put in a fire suppression system. So we're back to a level that this church was designed for. Okay? We know that we have a large enough critical mass in our band-led service now to make it possible. It's grown from about 90 to about 200. And so it's gained a critical mass that it will, have some momentum moving forward. And so that makes it possible. We're at a period of peace in our church. We came through the legacy renewal process in great shape. You know why I know that? We haven't lost our pastor yet. Yet. We're through the danger period though, Bobby Ann. But most churches that go through a stressful building program, their pastor's gone within a year. Okay? So We haven't lost our pastor. That's a plus. He's lost his hair, but we haven't lost our pastor.
He lost that
Way before we started.
Way before y'all came to the picture.
So anyway, but I love that I can pick on my pastor even when he's not here, and in front of his wife. It's great. But we're in a relative period of peace. We came through legacy renewal in really good shape. You know, the biggest complaint I got about legacy renewal is you can't do the doors with a wheelchair. Most of you aren't a wheelchair or walker, but it was hard to get in with a wheelchair. You know what? That's all getting busted out coming on Monday, and there's a new handicap entrance going in. That's awesome. But we're at this period of peace where we're just like solving problems and we're moving forward, okay? We're at a good spot musically. Bo's here. Bo's doing a good job. Bo's got great ideas. I like Bo. You know, Bo's kind of fun to be around with. And I knocked around in Israel. I have video of him floating in the Dead Sea. You know, I'll use that strategically at some point. But musically, our church is at a good spot. We're fully staffed. Do you realize how long it's been since we've been fully staffed? It's been a while. So we're at a good spot. And so, worship schedule. Okay? So let me hand out some more stuff that I don't want to take time to necessarily bore you with reading. I'm going to hand it out, and I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes just to kind of read through it, and then I'll stop and we'll answer any questions, and then we'll move on to schedules, okay?
Can I get somebody to help me enter? Would you mind taking both of you guys taking half a room? Yeah, the top one. Split those between you.
So what you're about to get is everything that's on the slide and more, okay? So there's going to be the proposed change, which was on the screen. They're going to see general rationale, which I went through a lot of those. One of the things is just a mathematics thing. In our 3 worship services, how many people do you think we can seat through the 3 worship services if we ran them full? Anybody want to venture a guess?
15,000.
Well, if you put the choir in, it's 2,000.
Okay.
So if you had a full choir in all 3 services, every seat full, we would be right at 2,000, give or take. How many people you want to put in the choir, John? But you're on just the auditorium, you're pretty close. Over the 3 worship services, we average 650, 700. So that's why we're having the discussion. We're kind of at the, roughly 50% mark of the 3 services. That's why getting to 2 is a little bit of an issue, I think. It's just to kind of bring some more energy in the room. So I'll be quiet for about 3 or 4 minutes and let you just kind of read through this, okay? Looks like everybody's close to done reading, so. Questions, comments about any of this? Questions or comments?
Is the band-led service outpacing the choir-led services here?
Outpacing.
Getting bigger, growing faster?
It's growing faster. It is our fastest growing service by far. Pardon? Is the band-led service outpacing the other services in growth? The answer is yes. It is by far. But that's a good question.
What do you mean by allowing us to lengthen the service, increase longer,
I can answer that one. As the former, Bible study, our curriculum was written for longer than.
Yes, and
It's pushing it, and so I'm hoping this means we actually have some more time in Bible study.
I have to shut Bob up every Sunday night. But I'll tell you what, Larry, we're having more and better participation we've ever had before in Sunday school class with Zoom here.
Good.
Question.
Ask your question, Bob.
We need to move, the first point is we need to move the band-led worship service to a better time. How do you correlate that with the fact that it's the fastest growing service that we got? I'm having difficulty to rationalize those 2 points.
Okay. And that's why we're having this meeting, because Jared and I are gonna sit down and we'll go back over this again. We'll go over to the staff. His question was, help me correlate fastest growing 8:30 versus better time slot.
Can I interrupt a second?
Sure.
So are you asking why mess up something that's
It's
working?
already working, is that what you're
Is
saying?
that fair?
Yeah,
Okay.
if that's,
Yeah, if it's working, why mess it up?
if that's the shining star, what's
That's
going
okay.
on,
No,
you're
you're
right.
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 No good question.
Okay, so you ready for me to answer the question? If it's growing at the, and now managed growth, let's put this in perspective, Bob. It's grown 100 plus people in 4 years. It's not just like burning up the road, okay? But it is growing. And when we look at our attendance in our worship services, it is the growing service. So here's the question, and I think it is a valid question. If by moving it to a better time slot, are we effectively stepping on the gas? Okay? Will growth in our church be accelerated by putting that service, which seems to be desirable, in the best time frame? That's the best way I can figure out how to explain that, is really what we're talking about is getting off that plateau by stepping on the gas. Okay? That's my best analogy. I'll work on another one.
Church-wise, or are we picking on a particular service because we want to present that as a growth opportunity here?
I think, no, we're not picking on a service. I think we're presenting it as a growth opportunity, and I'll cite this as an example. We know because I track Jeannie's class the closest, because I have to defend myself the most often against, what I say against what Jeannie does. Explain that? I can't. It came out twisted. I just dug a hole, just barely going. Yeah, I'm in a hole. Don't worry about it. Gifts generally get me out. No, we know from like Jeannie's class, because we see those people show up for Bible study. Prospects. We're talking about just pure prospects, not her attenders. But the number of people that we have not attracted because coming at 8:30 is difficult for them to worship. What they just literally go to celebration. We had a lady came in the office and asked about our worship services this past week and how the children's minister associate did a good job in explaining our service schedule, what's options for preschoolers, and basically I didn't want to get up that early. I'll go to celebration, thank you. And so we're seeing people that are choosing against us based on worship. And so the thought is that if it is in the preferable time, that we will accelerate our attractiveness.
I don't want to argue that. You gave me an anecdotal incident.
What do I need to give you then? Do you want a hard number? I don't know that I have hard numbers, Bob, because I can't pilot this.
Well, I think too, I think that what we're saying is not necessarily that we're saying, if we go from 3 to 2, both services become preferable times over at 8:30.
Yeah.
None of them will be 8:30 anymore. You know what I'm saying? Either one, whether it's contemporary first, or band led first, or choir led first, either one becomes a more preferable time because neither is as early. I think that kind of,
That's part of what, let's come back to your, pardon me.
There's no time zone, so we.
No, I have schedules that are coming, sample schedules. So we'll come back to that, Bob, okay? Because I think it'll be even more confusing in a minute, okay? Other questions? Yeah.
Might not an unintended consequence of making this change be that you're going to ding your Sunday school attendance?
Oh, I'm almost banking on we're going to ding Sunday school attendance.
that's
Now,
part of any changes.
but the thing is that ding is one thing, damage is another. And accelerate is a different thing. So like we were having a discussion in Jeannie's class about starting another class, and I mentioned, you know, the opportunity for a later time. And 3 people in her class went, yes. You know, and they're people who have grown up in this church. So it's a good time to have this discussion. We're going to have it. Yes, Susan?
I think new families, especially younger families that are coming from looking for churches, they come at 11 o'clock and they're expecting family service because that's predominantly what's out there.
Right.
So I think if they come now 11 o'clock, they're thinking, oh, this is a rather elderly group here.
And where we have the biggest problem with that is if they come at 9:45, because that service is not multi-generational. It's
Old people.
it is. Hang on, I have the perfect word for this. I have an architectural son. It has experienced gentrification. Okay, it's gentrified. So let that be what you want it to be. Okay. Other questions about this handout? Yeah.
I got 2. How many can I have? Can I have 2 right or over?
Go for it.
Okay, all right. Parking. How many roads have an east parking?
Do what?
How is it going to be east parking if we crowded into 2 services?
Let's just do this. Let me hand out the schedules and we'll talk through them and then we'll get to that, okay?
Okay.
All right, so we got to look at how things flow now, all right? But is there anything to this list that you want to add or you want to debate other than Bob's? Because my goal is to try to give you everything that I know, and then what you think you need to know, I'm going to try to go find the answer to that and get back to you.
Jerry had a good plus. He said this will mean that the pastor has to do 2 services instead of 3. Yeah. I know this morning, this group of us, prayed before the 9:45 service, and he was telling us, you know, we asked what we pray for, and he said just a little bit more clarity, because he sort of messed up on the first service. He does like the first service because he gets to practice a little bit, but then he finds out a mistake. But then I think it just do it, you know. I think 2 services would be fine.
Okay. My wife, who's a public school teacher, just cut him no slack, okay?
The other way. Calvin, or somebody, could you do this side for me real quick?
I do think he appreciates our prayer at 9:45.
I'm sure he does. I know when I preach, I appreciate it. Let's talk process while this is being handed out. So here's kind of the process that as it's unfolding, okay? This is Larry's assessment. There's no handout for this. This is just how I kind of see this unfolding, okay? We're going through here's what we know. We've made some observations. We're making some evaluations. Staff is doing research. We're talking among ourselves. That's all good. Here's what we're prayerfully thinking and feeling. We're talking about now models. We're having a discussion, and we're trying to refine the input. Moving forward, we're going to make a vision, values, ministry decision. Okay? We're going to do some planning, and we're going to do some promotion through a period of time. And then we're going to start. Now, that's just to get to start. If start's not good, then we can go back and we can make further refinements or we can make another change. But I think this is kind of as I see the process unfolding. It's not like time to the month. It's not Gantt charted or anything like that. It is just a flow. Okay? And so we're kind of at this point where we're moving from here's what we know to prayerfully thinking and feeling. Okay? So we're kind of right at that spot right now. So that's where I see us. Okay? So I'm going to jump through these and you can kind of follow along. Here are the models. The first one is the sandwich model. Okay? And so the sandwich model is 8:30 choir-led worship service. It's still an hour. You don't get your extra time. There is one Sunday school, 9:45, 10:45, 1 hour, no extra time. And then there's 11 to 12 band-led worship. Okay, that's the sandwich model. And then you see listed on the page all the pros and cons. I didn't bother to put them on the screen because I just didn't feel it was worth it. But the pros and cons of that service, simplicity. Of the schedules, the thing in this pros and cons list that jump out at me, it's simple. It's easy to explain. It's easy to know when to be here. It's easy to park. You know, it doesn't help our parking, but it's simple. I think that's the thing that it does. It also doesn't force any Sunday school group to choose worship over Bible study. Because you can come early for band led and go to Bible study. You could come to Bible study and go to, I did that backwards. You could come early for choir led, go to Bible study. You could go to Bible study, come for band led, and your Sunday school class isn't affected by the worship decision.
We have the same situation now, though.
We do. For the most part. Not in every class, but for the most part. Okay? But Jack, it's the simple.
Do we
one.
have space for one Sunday school hour?
Well, that's an interesting question. Nobody knows space in this building better than me. Maybe Mark Alarcon. I have a gigantic spreadsheet that has every room in the building, even offices, square foot. Okay? I haven't done all the closets, but I got a few. If it's big enough to hold the class, it's on the chart. Yes, but. So in this issue, every time we talk about adult space, it's going to be yes, but. Yes, but it is a major shift. Okay? How big of a shift would it be? It would be taking basically everything from this room through Melvis hallway down to the preschool hallway and packing it into Melvis hallway, the first floor. So basically student ministry goes to the second floor, roughly. Melva just gets the first floor, creeps into Tracy's space, and then preschool goes down the hallway from there. Roughly. Because we'd have to have this space for adults. That's a big change.
What would be the capacity on the classes at that point?
Capacity on the class, I have it in just rough numbers because here's the but part.
I'm not sure.
Hang on, I got two questions going on. What's the capacity? The capacity question is a good question, numerically we fit. However, now we start dealing with senior adults, walking, those types of issues. Now things get really complicated. Is it doable? Yes.
But I mean, would it involve 80% of the space? Would it still allow us some room to grow in Sunday school?
It would allow us to grow for a while,
Okay.
till we could get the next building built. Pretty much that's what it obligates us to, John,
Okay.
is to start planning the next adult building.
What's this building going to be used for? What's this group?
This would become adult space, roughly. We're talking hypothetical. I'm not going to spend my time mapping out rooms and telling you where you're going to go until I know what we're going to do. But in a generic, bodies need this much space, do we have this much space available? Yes, it works
For one Sunday school.
for one Sunday school. It's not ideal,
Right.
and there's a lot of problems. And just hear that. So I don't know we're going to have a hard number on any of the space stuff because I just don't know that it's worth pushing it that far at this point. Okay? But we're talking about those kinds of changes. I want to be honest and fair about that. Now, I just made Tim mad, Tracy mad, and Melvin mad. And probably about half of you. Okay? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But now we're talking about, is the cost worth the benefit? Okay? That's where we get to. All right? Let's go to the next one. And I'm going to give you time to work through this, and just like I did the other one. The flip-flop with the early Sunday school. Okay? So let's and I know this, on all these schedules, they're still, none of this is set in stone. We're just kind of talking at this point. So there's room to tweak when we start, when we end, those kinds of things. But if we did the flip-flop with an early Sunday school, we would be looking at an 8 a.m. to 9 Sunday school hour. Okay? It would really, truly be the early bird class. Okay? 9:15, we would do Sunday school and the choir-led service. And then at 10:45, we would have the band-led service. Okay? That's the early with that's the flip-flop with the early Sunday school. Okay? Now, some of the things, I'm just going to pick out a couple out of this that are kind of true. A couple of things that I like, and a couple of things I think are kind of true about this, but maybe not fully. It gives us a slightly longer transition period, and it does give us a fuzz longer second Sunday school hour. Just a fuzz, not a lot, but a fuzz. Okay? So those are things. It does move the band to the later service. We do have plenty of educational space to make this model work because it's very close to what we're doing now. Okay? Those are the positives. A couple of things that are on here that I don't know that are fully true, and you can help me in phrasing these how you want to, allows older adults to keep the same pattern of Sunday school then worship. I don't know that that's fully true for all of our Sunday school classes because we have Singles 3 and Virginia's class. It's not, some of these statements are not uniformly true to all groups. So just, that's a disclaimer. You know, this is a list that's been generated. I don't know that I agree with every statement fully. Okay? Like that's one, I don't know that that's 100% true. Okay?
Speaking for the 60 to 90-year-olds in my class, an 8 a.m. Sunday school time is not going to be looked on favorably.
Okay? And that's probably true with most of our senior adults. We like to think senior adults get up early, but I know from experience, some of them are not early risers.
Larry, one other thing this would do, this has a tendency to put a big cramp on the choir program because it forces all the choir members to have to be in that early Sunday school.
It does.
And that's going to limit the choir.
Yeah, that one, Jared and I talked about that one after this list was published. That's been talked about, John.
Wouldn't that be extremely difficult for families with small children?
It'd be impossible.
Getting them up and getting them ready and getting them here?
And this is one of those things, and I meant to say this earlier, but so one of the things that I think is important to do as a Sunday school leader and a leader in our church, and I don't know that we're fully there yet, is to think about this in a way that your pattern or your like or your kids or your whatever is not the norm of everybody else. Okay? So like, I know a family that's got boys and they would love for Bible study to start at 7:30 because their kids have been going for a while. Okay? My granddaughter got up at 8 this morning. Ages are similar. So that's one of the things that is walking through this, I'm trying not to do, is where my experience is not what I think is normal. So I've tried to really like play through this schedule of how I know different people. And to say that all senior adults are going to love to get up at 8 o'clock, that may be true for some. It's maybe not true for everyone. But like I said, these are talking points. These are the places we're starting. We're not moving to any of these tomorrow. At the earliest, it would probably be September. So we're trying to I want you guys to have time to mull this over and get back to me. Okay? So, obviously there's some things that we think are positives about that. There are some things that we think are negatives. Okay? Time's going to get away from you. Let's move to the next one. The straight flip-flop. Okay? This is what, to be honest, most churches use. And here's the pluses. This isn't on the piece of paper, but I'm just going to tell you, having lived through this, watched a lot of my friends go through this, here's what happens. This service locks kind of people to interesting spots. Obviously, the youth are going to go where most of the youth are going to go where the band-led worship is. That's what they like. That's what they're most geared into. The students are the union. They vote as a block. They move as a block. But what the union does is it brings their parents right along with them. So we're almost back to the very start of what started us into the 8:30 worship. It was a student felt need. Somebody met it. Parents followed because they need to get on the same schedule. And then it changed children's schedules. And pretty soon we've got 2 children's Sunday schools going on. And this is how it grows. And so we're going to see in this flip-flop, we'll see something between a 60-40, 70-30 change in our church. With the youth, wherever the youth go, that's going to be the 70 or 60, the high number. Because it's going to pull their families, it's going to pull their parents, siblings, they go that way. But basically, it's early worship, Sunday school and choir led at the same time, and then basically just flip the space, and it's Sunday school and then band led worship. You get a little bit longer time in this schedule, and so it's a little bit more relaxed. The only one that really kind of helps with the parking one is the early, with the flip-flop with the early, okay? And so then you see the pros and cons. I won't read all those to you. Anything that we do as a church in worship, adult Bible study is going to follow along and feel some twinge with that. In some areas, I think that's going to be a very positive thing. In some areas, I'm not sure. I've sat down with the numbers, and anything that we talk about space-wise, I think I can make it work. Now, can I make it work ideally? That is a whole different question. Because now we get into having, I'm trying right now. I've got 2 Sunday school classes that want to come down on the ground floor and be closer to worship. And that's great. I just don't have a place for them. So we start working those problems out. It gets a little more thorny for me. But I think they're doable, as long as we as leadership feel that our church is going to benefit long term. And I think that's what I keep looking to is how much are we going to gain? Could this be a church of 1,000 in 2 years? To be honest, I don't see why not.
Have we mapped these changes, the scheduling, of what we think the outcome would be if we would experience a 30 to 50% growth in 2 years? I mean, is the model consistent with a growth pattern?
Well, they say Round Rock's growing 12%.
Per year?
I'd have to look at the period, but we've experienced 12% growth over. I'll look it up. It's in the latest, not the newest, but the one before's.
My question is, have we done?
Oh, I know what your question is.
Consider that kind of growth as we look at these models.
If we look at these models and let's just say we can average 3% net growth a year, okay? That's minimal. And we've done that before. That's not really us really even breaking a sweat bottle. Let's just say we're going to do that, okay? If we pick the worst space model, which is the single Sunday school, we're living on about 5 years until we've maxed it out. I have done that kind of math. Now, some of the other ones, it gets kind of fuzzy where you put stuff and who goes where and those kind of things.
how many times we can flip a room, those kind of, it just gets harder. Not impossible, but there's just a return on my time that becomes critical at that point. Okay, final page. You ready? I'm going to give you my starting point as a staff member. You ready? This is where I got to start. You can start here too. As we think about this, the two stipulations on worship service that we got as a staff basically were at least one band-led service and one choir-led service. And right now we're talking at two just based on the numbers. But that's the statement that I got roughly when I started. And then the band-led service must end the schedule. So it's got to be the last one. Okay? So that's the two givens that all of this starts from. Okay?
Why does the band have to end?
Well, because we think, we feel.
The second part of that question is, since we feel that the band-led service in the later time would kick on the gas, why is it something that we feel like we can't move that choir-led service in the later period to a band-led service and maintain the 9:45 service? We have a parking situation here, we have a space situation here. And so cutting it down to two services actually exaggerates the problem more than anything else. So my challenge here is, what is the outcome that you're trying to accomplish here? We were tight this morning. 5 years ago when I joined this church, we were in the band-led service in this room. And I looked around this morning in the worship service and it was pretty tight. I was actually thinking that it's getting close to the time to open up the balcony for the 8:30 service. So I hear that we have members that really do enjoy the choir-led service, but I feel like at this point, maybe that's the 9:45 service.
Well, I think
we maintain 3 services. Our parking cannot handle more.
And I would encourage Andrew to write that out, because like I said, we haven't. These are the talking points. I'm here to just kind of share my thought. I've had the same feeling. You know, why not just kind of massage around what we've got? And I don't know that that's not doable.
And I want to kind of conclude my thoughts on this. I feel like we're flipping a switch, when in reality we need to kind of move into a transition. If that's something that we want to get to a two service, and we're looking at a building campaign, and we're looking at an expansion of another building, maybe that transition is, well, we take a few band instruments into the 11 o'clock service and see if that kicks on some gas.
And we've talked about that, and I've been tasked with some other things. But I think, let me clarify a couple things. Building program, please say Larry thinks to that. That is not a staff opinion. That is...
It's hard coming out of a major campaign.
I understand. But that's just Larry being honest with his leadership. Okay? So please attach, if you say that is not a church directive, that's what Larry thinks. And please attach it that way. I don't want to put Jared under a rock he doesn't want to be under. But I'll go there, because I said it public. I'll own it. And I should be the only one that owns that one. You have some very valid points, and they are worthy of being in this discussion. So, like I said, we haven't arrived at the final fire solution. I felt it important to let you all know that this discussion is going on, because I don't want the discussion to happen solely based upon what we think will happen around 2 worship services. As good as that will be, or can be, you know, I look at the people that we haven't held on to in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I wonder, is this what is the missing piece of the puzzle? Is that band of 11 that fits more of how they want to do church? There isn't a 100% way of saying, yes it is, but if we look at what's going on around us, that seems to be the case. And that's all we really have got at this point. And so, but yeah, this is an opportunity to write some stuff down, pray about it, mull it over, give it back to me. Make your pros and cons list about what you think should happen. Because to be honest, why we're having this discussion and why your input is important is this decision is really about worship. But because of the style of church that we are, it will impact us. And I want this group to have the opportunity to kind of, hey, have you thought about, what about this? Because I think,
To help me articulate that what you'd like me to write up, it would be helpful to see this chart with the line of the worship attendance by service, so that I can see that 100 increase in the 8:30 service, and basically because I'm seeing a stagnant line here, I should see that 100 decrease
Okay.
in the other service.
Sherry, can you do
Is
that for
something
us?
that can be done?
Yeah. We have the worship service
I'm
broke
figuring
out
by
by,
every number
yeah.
possible.
I just try not to inundate you with numbers. Yeah.
I have a question. Earlier you were saying how people see that our early service with the band is at 8:30, they kind of go, I'm not getting up that early, so they go somewhere else. And you mentioned what celebration seems to be attracting that crowd.
That's one in the area.
What time do they start? What is their early service?
I don't know what their earliest is on Sunday morning, but they do Saturday night. Can somebody Google it real quick for me? I really don't know what their time schedule is on Sunday, but they're a completely different style of church too.
Yeah.
I think they just run 2 services on Sunday, don't they? Sunday morning? Or does it even say on their website? Their website doesn't say much. Okay.
The celebration of the school. I know they're putting out the signs at 8 when we get here.
Yeah, Jay.
What's frustrating to me, I guess, is we talked about matching ourselves up with the churches in Austin, churches locally here with their bands and their attendance. You haven't said one thing about our educational programs here and our preaching. You know, that's what we ought to be measuring. I think we ought to be highlighting to bring people in now. If we have to put a band out there, we'll write just like every other church, doing something to please the people we do. And, you know,
And
I understand we get them in and then we can talk to them, we gotta preach to them and all this. Have you been in one of those services up there? You ought to go at celebration and see what goes on. Okay, and how much actual,
I got their own.
You got it.
Yeah, they're 9:30 and 11:30, and then Saturday 5 p.m.
Yeah. And they go, I think, an hour and a 15, hour and a half, hour and 15
They don't
minutes.
list how long the service is.
They've got about a 20-minute break, I think, between services, whatever that, somebody really good with their thinking up there. And I think what I want you to hear is we're not trying to get rid of a choir-led service. Matter of fact, there is some thought that it would strengthen it. Now, it affects who goes to what hour and those sort of things.
You know, Larry, one of the things I've seen this in other churches. One of the things that's always going to happen when you have a multiple Sunday school, whether it's 2 or 3, it's wherever the youth are, you can't split them up. You can't do parallel youth ministries. It just does not work. So you have a single hour where you have youth. And then because even if you have children's programming in the other hours, it has a tendency to still funnel toward that youth hour because the families aren't going to have children in one area and kids somewhere else, youth. So you focus all the families pretty much to that 1 hour, and it segregates the services.
Well, one of the
There's almost
things,
no way around it.
yeah, one of the things that is different about us is we have probably a higher percentage than normal. I don't know. This is my opinion, so I guess I should qualify, John. We have in this church a number of families that enjoy choir-led worship.
Sure.
And so some of those schedules that allow family to kind of pick and choose on worship over Bible study, I'm a Bible study guy. Obviously, I'm going to lean towards those sort of things. I want Bible study to be in the strongest possible position. But I don't want to do that at the penalty of people who love choir or people who love band or worship. Because to be honest, I'm not going to get what I want in worship, so I gave up, you know. So no one's going to do, 20 minutes of cool jazz and 40 minutes of good Bible study and go home. That would be worshipful to me. But it's not going to happen. But I keep trying, okay? So, but you're right. All of these things have negatives. And I'm not going to say there aren't negatives. It's almost which ones impact us the least, and hopefully I think in that we're asking the bigger question of which ones benefit us the most. And I think that's the two questions I keep coming back to. The schedules and all that stuff, we can play with those and work with those, but the ultimate big question is the one Jared and I keep going round and round about is what it's going to cost us going to be worth what we think it will benefit us? And that's where we really come around to every time. So, well, I've used my full hour, and so I want to honor that. I will hang around and answer as many questions as I can, but I don't know that I have as many hard answers that I normally come to you with. But I did feel if this is something we're going to talk about doing as a church in the fall, I wanted to get it to you as soon as I could, and so we're clear at the point where I could talk to you. This is the first place I wanted to come.
So in the timeline for moving forward with some sort of a change, announcement by June or something for implementation in September?
Yeah, I would think we would be announcing it somewhere along June, July, and then we would be moving towards it, gearing up July, August, and then starting in September.
So all the contemplation on this is going to happen in the next 3 months?
Probably. So that's why I wanted to get here sooner than later.
What do you want us to say to our classes about this?
Here's what I would offer as far as classes. Very good question. What do you want us to say to our classes? I think it's okay to say there's a consideration being made about worship schedules. I don't know that any of these things I've given you are top secret. I'm not going to treat them as top secret. Matter of fact, I'm going to put the video out on Monday or Tuesday. And so if you want to show a piece of the video, fine. If you want me to come by and have a conversation with your class, and I won't have the conversation with them. Like Jeannie's class, we're talking about starting a new unit. I'll come in and make my presentation, and then I'll leave, because I think I alter the conversation. I think it's much more honest between you and your class members than when I just waltz in and, I get treated like staff. And I think I'm more interested in a much more honest opinion than somebody trying to tell me what I think I want to hear. Because I want to hear honestly from you guys. And we have the relationship. I hope we have the relationship that if I'm barking the wrong tree, you're going to tell me.
So we talked about morning. Does this change anything in what's going on in the evening Sunday worship?
No effect.
We're not still not going to go to evening services.
All I can say, Jack, is, and Andrew, has not been talked about. So I'm going to say no effect.
So are we going to respect those?
All I can say is it hasn't been talked about. I'll be more than happy to ask that question.
Okay, I would like to have that question.
Because Virginia and I were bemoaning the fact that we have no ongoing discipleship training anymore as Southern Baptists. We were bemoaning that this morning. So now, based upon making these changes, would Larry contemplate other changes? Larry.
Larry, all of these are predicated on going from 3 services to 2.
That is the driver.
And
one of the 2 drivers.
One of the 2 drivers. And we want to do that because?
To get a more positive feel in the room.
Well, why don't we, okay. I was going to say, we could move the band service to 11 and still have 3.
Yeah, see, and that's where I started with Jared, just to be honest, is because I suggested that way early in the beginning. And that accomplishes one of the 2 drivers by getting the band-led service at 11, but it doesn't deal with the 1680, the rules of 1680.
Okay.
So like I said, those are the 2 kind of givens. And if we can get more time and deal with parking, those are pluses.
So in making the consideration, the 1 driver then is 2 services. That's the part that we're definitely moving to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then all the other structure has to fit 2 services.
Yeah, and I think right now, if I'm going to call a lean, okay, it's going to be, that second service is going to be band led, because we think that will pull,
Yeah.
make us the most attractive to the people we're trying to reach.
Makes sense.
All good questions, all good head shaking. Now we do what Baptists do best. We discuss and discuss it. Okay? Gonna eat, there's chocolate on the tables, take all you want. Yeah, one more question.
This is kind of random, but what about, let's say we're going down to two services. What about alternating the band and choir between the two services? That way the people who like the band, they can do choir occasionally, and the people who go to choir, they can do band.
That wouldn't work because of choir, because the choir members are gonna be in a Sunday school class, and when you switch that around, that's gonna just
I
totally.
will say this, whenever like the kids sing in worship,
Yeah.
it's like, oh. And the reason is, I love the kids in worship. It's exactly where they need to be. But every time they sing, I've got a dip in my Sunday school attendance. It takes Melva forever to get started. We're getting better at it. It takes Tracy a long time to get started, because you just don't move kids magically. You know, they've been all dressed up. They've been threatened within an inch of their life. They sing, now they've got to go to the bathroom, they're trying to get out of the scratchy whatever, and it just takes a lot out of us Bible school wise when that happens. I think we'd see maybe even a worse effect with adults, but at this point, write it up and I'll throw it in the hopper. I'm not guaranteeing anybody gets very far in the hopper, because I've got multiple ideas that have died there, okay?
You know, I've never been exposed to a band-led service in this church. And
Come try it
a lot
sometime.
of the people who have only gone to the band-led service have never been exposed to the choir part. Why don't we try mixing it up sometimes so that people who haven't been exposed to that can see what it's like?
Pose that to both. Okay? I'm not saying no. I mean, I've been to Saddleback, and one of the Sundays I was at Saddleback, which is a hugely contemporary worship venue, if you've ever been there, the men's choir sang.
Yeah.
It was great. The men's choir appeared, they sang their number, and then I turned around and they disappeared. And so, obviously their building's built a little bit differently than ours, but those things to be a multi-generational church, and a church that appreciates all of its membership and all of its facets, I don't think we're losing any of that in our discussion. I don't think we're trying to like railroad things to one way or the other. At least that's not my impression. And that's not certainly how I work, so. Okay, I'm now 15 minutes over, so let me pray and I'll stick around and answer any questions, all right? Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank you for this evening, and I love these guys. This is, without a doubt, the strongest faculty I've ever served with, God. And they challenge me, and they inspire me. And Lord, as we grapple with what we know to be complex and weighty decisions, Lord, help us to see this with your eyes, and to experience it with your heart, and to love our community like you do, with a desire to see them won to Christ and discipled in our classes. I pray this in your name. Amen.
I just want to let